it was a weirdly empowering experience, right? Because I put my foot down and held a boundary and said, no, I have to look after me. And if people don't understand, that's on them. That's not on me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Stacey Uhrig. I'm your host, and today's guest is Gordon Melville. Gordon is super inspirational. You're going to love this. He's known as the long-bearded guy. For those of you who are watching us on video, you'll see why. He's got a beautiful long beard. We'll have to find out how long that is. And Gordon's here to share his story of what it looked like as an overproducer, somebody who never stopped running, took no care of himself for 7 years until he hit rock bottom, took a screeching halt in life. And his goal is to get more men to connect. And he's got a goal of over the next 24 months to intimately connect with 10 million men so they can learn that it's okay to share emotion, it's okay to feel emotion, experience emotion, and what that can look like for them and why. So welcome, Gordon. So nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Yeah. So quick question. How long is that beard?
You know what? I haven't measured it. I would think it 10, 12 inches probably.
It's epic.
Yeah. It's well, when we talked about my show, how we named that, we kept coming with the beard guy because people, that's how they refer to me. And so there's lots of people with a beard. So we added the word long because when I had a regular length beard, no one ever mentioned it. It's a beard, or that's great. Lots of people mention it now. So the long part is what really catches people. So the long bearded guy.
Well, you'll never be able to shave it now.
Nope. Much to my wife's dismay, she said, you know what, I'm going to shave half it off while you're sleeping. So you have to shave the other half off. But now that it's been branded, it's there.
So Gordon, you are a walking, talking billboard for what happens when no self-care
Very true.
occurs in a life. Why don't you share a little bit of that story with us?
Absolutely. Happy to. Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to share it and to spread the message some more. To your point, absolutely. We need to be able to share and let that stuff out. There's a lot of people say stigma, and I hate that word because I think it's a sanitized, civilized word that we use so that we don't have to admit what we're really doing, which is just being judgmental. Take the judgment away. Stop the judgment. If you take the word stigma out and put the word judgment in anywhere you find it, it's probably more accurate and more honest to what's happening. So
yeah,
the piece with and you had said 7 years. I've been sick for 7 years. I was Energizer Bunny for 30 years with no self-care, teaching self-care but not doing any self-care.
Can you share what that would look like? Teaching self-care but never having self-care in your routine?
Knowing that you needed to do it. So we were raised others centered, meaning, everybody comes before you. So I would make sure people had, the time off they needed, that would have make sure you eat properly, make sure that you're exercising, make sure that you're eating as clean as you can, make sure that you're doing the bits and pieces that we all knew we needed to do, but I wasn't doing those things. And so when my body would say, hey, I also have autoimmune stuff happening, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis and a bunch of other things. And so those bits and pieces of that would show up in my life, right? And I would ignore it. So instead of, I remember one weekend when we lived in Chatham, it was a particularly stressful. I spent 25 years in the automotive retail sector and was running a store in a little town, and there was a lot of pressure month to month to perform. And so we needed some numbers on that Saturday, and there was a lot of pressure both for me and for my crew. And so it was the weather was horrendous. And anyway, long story short, there wasn't a lot of traffic. There wasn't a lot of people in the store that day. And so the pressure kind of built up and built up and built up. And around lunchtime, we said, hey, you know what, let's encourage everybody. We'll grab pizza. We'll buy lunch for everybody. So we did that. And I had a couple pieces of pizza. And then within 20 minutes, I was in the bathroom. And I probably lost a cup and a half of blood from someplace you shouldn't lose blood. and was low iron and was not talking correctly when I came out of. I mean, you could tell there was a problem, and they should have probably taken me to the hospital. But somebody that knew that was part of my deal. She drove me, and I was like, no, please don't take. It was Thanksgiving weekend. We had a house full of guests. Please just take me home. And she's like, no, I got to take you to the hospital. I'm like, no, just take me home. And so she did. She took me home. She should have taken me to emerge. That's where I should have ended up. But my point is is a glaring example of going, hey, you know what? I know I should be. I know there's things that should be, but I just, for whatever reason, some of that's a guy thing. Sometimes unless we're coughing up a lung, we don't want to go to the hospital or to a doctor. So we ignore it and we push it, hold it inside or push it down, or we just don't pay attention to it. So doing self-care, and I believe for lots of things in our lives, there's a huge knowing doing gap. For a lot of people, most people have a knowing doing gap. They know what to do, they just don't execute. Everybody knows how to release weight, but there's a obesity epidemic. Why? They know what to do: eat less, exercise, and move more, and you'll be fine. But we don't do it. We don't actually execute. And sometimes the audacity of doing is the way I would describe that, and being actually able to step out and execute, actually put boots on the ground and do what you're talking about, right?
So I have an interesting question for you about that, the knowing doing gap.
Yeah.
Because it kind of also reminds me of, it's just a mindset thing. Change your mindset and things will change.
Right.
But I have such a strong belief that there's a missing layer to that concept, which is it's the core belief. It's your worthiness. It's your deservingness. It's your enoughness,
right,
to do that. And so,
Absolutely.
For example, this knowing doing gap, which I love this term, you knew better. You knew you should go to the hospital.
Right.
But what I was writing down earlier when you were talking about you were raised with this others concept, it teaches us to deprioritize ourselves.
Right.
And this is a term that's used a lot in the mental health space, this deprioritization that occurs at the expense of our health, our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health.
Yeah.
And it's martyrdom, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
There's a sense that if you do take care of yourself, you're selfish. If you do take care of yourself, you're vain.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of that, I know you shared with me when you and I did kind of our pre-podcast powwow, you were raised strict Baptist. Is that correct?
Very, very, yeah.
So do you feel like that played into that at all?
It absolutely does. And to your points, knowing doing gap is a Bob Proctor concept. That's not, I can't take
yeah, he's so great.
Yeah. But yes, I agree with you 1,000%. I think they did a massive disservice in general when we were taught it's not, we were taught it's selfish to look after yourself first, but it's selfish not to look after yourself first. Because what I found out experientially was all the reasons I was pushing in 300 miles an hour with my hair on fire constantly was for my family. And then when in late 2015, when my body said, hey, I'm out, I was no good to my family. I was no good to my clients or my wife, right? I was no good to anybody, not even myself. And so what I've learned over the last, actually it's been 7 years, but it's probably been in the last 2 or 3 years. Worth and value is a monster huge thing that shows up all over the place. Because if we don't understand what our true worth and value is, we don't show up even for ourselves the way we're supposed to. So how the hell do we show up for anybody else? Say again? Can
you define that concept for people?
Yeah, for me, my foundation and my worth and value I get from Papa. So he says we have, and however I call God Papa because of my relationship, but wherever you get that upper power, higher power, universal intelligence, however you describe that, he talks about infinite value for no other reason than we are, not because of what we've done or what we think or what our bank account says or where we live or what we drive or what our title is at work or who we know, or none of that matters to him. Because we are. And then the mic drops, right? It's a concept that says, but we don't plug into that. It's a concept that says we have infinite value because we are. I think a lot of times from a spiritual side, I believe Papa's King of Kings. So, and we're all his kids. So that makes you a princess and me a prince. But we don't think about it that way. He wants us to be abundant. We don't think about it that way. We don't, where's that coming from? We don't, and best illustration I can give you for that is, if the ocean represents the abundance that that Papa wants us to have, and you and I are in line together, and he looks at you and says, "Okay, Stacey, what is it you would like? How much abundance do you want?" And you look at him and go, "Can I have it all?" And he says, "Yes, I want you to have it all. I want you to have it all." And he picks up the whole ocean and hands it to you. And you walk away with the whole ocean going, with a big smile and all excited. And then I step up and it's empty because you took it, and he fills it all back up. And then he looks at me and goes, "Okay, Gordon, what do you want?" And I'm like, "Oh, can I have what Stacey got? I want what Stacey got." And he's like, "Yes, I want you to have it." And so he picks it up and hands it to me. The challenge is that because of who we think we are, and because of we don't realize what our worth and our value is, not truly, we step up to get that abundance with a spoon. Because this is what we feel our abundance. This is what our worth and our value is. And Papa sadly fills it up, and it overflows and spills out all over the place because he's about abundance. And we walk away going, "Abundance, my ass. That's not abundance." And it's not because Papa didn't want to give it to us. It's because we limited it.
I'm so glad we're talking about this because, as a coach that really focuses in trauma, and I consider myself kind of a trauma specialist, this is the trauma. Whatever experience you've had growing up, doesn't have to be aggression. It doesn't have to be abuse. It doesn't have to be violent in order for it to be traumatizing. Anything that leaves you feeling unseen, unheard, insignificant, unimportant, not enough, unworthy, undeserving, shifts your lens in such a way for the rest of your life, unless you're willing to finally say enough. It shifts your relationship with yourself. It shifts your relationship with others. The entire world around you is now seen through this different lens of worthiness. Some of that's taught to us. Some of that is witnessed, Some of that is just interpreted, an interpretation could be, and I've seen this a lot when I've done hypnosis with clients, somebody goes back to being in second grade, grade 2, and they ran to the bathroom between lunch and recess, literally, and they go outside and everybody's already engaged in play. And the interpretation is, I'm not important because nobody's coming up to me. Now, that's not the first time that would have been the thought process for that child. Now that's just the reaffirming belief that's actually inaccurate, but it's the belief that the child came up with. And so as adults, we're walking with this childlike view and interpretation of our worthiness.
Exactly right.
And at some point, it no longer serves you. So at some point, Gordon, it served you for many, many years. You were very successful at what you did. People came to you. It worked, this deprioritization. Let me put everybody else first. I'm going to go. Keep busy. People please, no boundaries. It served you at some point. But then at another point, your body said enough.
Well, and I don't think, and I tell my sons, I've got 3 teenage sons, and I tell them all the time, it's okay to run 300 miles an hour with your hair on fire. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. All the people I want to emulate, they all do the same thing. The challenge is they have to make sure that they're doing the self-care, because if they're not 100%. Doing self-care, I mean, and if people can't deal with that, I went from car business to financials. And one of the things, I had a client during RSP season, so 401k for you guys, where they could put their money. It's a busy time. And I had a client with a couple $1 million that I was looking after for him. And we had an appointment, and I needed time. I had been pushing really hard, and I wasn't at 100%. And I said to him on the phone, can we reschedule till later today so I can have a nap? I need to do some self-care. And he said, you know what, if you can't meet me when we're supposed to, I've got a lot of money with you. And in the past, I would have said yes. In the past, I would have gone, you know what, I'll just show up. But I said to him, do you want me at 100% or at like 30, 35%? And he goes, no, I need you at 100%. I said, yeah, me too. I want to be there for you. So you need to let me have a nap. And he's like, no, if you can't meet on the time, then I'll take my money and go elsewhere. And I'm like, you know what, then you're going to have to take your money and go elsewhere. If that's what you need to do and you can't be understanding, then you know what, I'll just find somebody else or a couple other people that have the same amount of money as you that understand and want to be human with me. And I had to be okay with that. And it was a weird thing because he picked up his money and went to somebody else. And I was like, okay, it was a weirdly empowering experience, right? Because I put my foot down and held a boundary and said, no, I have to look after me. And if people don't understand, that's on them. That's not on me.
This is such an important thing to discuss, because this is about the boundary setting and the now prioritizing ourselves,
right?
Not in a way. Look, you can call it selfish, you can call it whatever you want,
but it's not.
You cannot pour from an empty cup.
Well, you can't. You're right, but I think it's selfish not to, because what's happening, and that's why I say there's the disservice that, whether it's religion or upbringing or whatever, I think the disservice was, it's not look after yourself first instead of your responsibilities to the people that you're responsible to.
In addition to, yes. So if you're usually getting up at 7 or 6 now, and there's no other time in your day, then you're getting up an hour earlier, whatever time you need to do your self-care. You're getting up, you're manufacturing that time, to make sure that you got your stuff done so that you can show up the way you want to and are expected to. And I'm not a big expectation guy, but people we have people that are looking up to us or looking to us for help or whatever. And if we can't show up for them the way we're supposed to, then we haven't done the self-care at the levels they should have been. People ask all the time, what does that mean? What's self-care? Because I'm a big, you can tell me what to go and do. In the car business, the managers used to say, go make calls, because we know that's important. And I'm like, okay, what do I say? Well, I don't know, but I know it was important to make calls. So go. That's not helpful. I need to load my lip. Tell me what's going on. So what does self-care mean? What does that entail? What does that look like? Some things are universal. So sleeping, getting the rest you need, eating clean, exercise, those types of things are universal. But there's a bunch of stuff that we need individually because we're all different. So I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of journaling. I do a lot of meditation. I do some stuff. I do my quiet time in the middle of that. The thing is, whatever the pieces are for you, we need to do them. You need to do the pieces of self-care that you need to be able to show up the way you want to for your world and for your life the way you want to do it. I'll tell you. So here's the deal. I just went through this really intensive certification program with the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching. Okay. Really intense. Before class even started, the very first thing we had to do was commit to whatever our self-care plan was going to be.
Yep.
And at first I was like, oh, this is interesting, right?
Right.
But the concept was the burnout rate is so high for trauma recovery coaches because of the space that we hold for other people. Right. What is your commitment weekly, daily to yourself?
Right.
So it was the things that you mentioned, but it was also who is your support system?
Right. Very
List
true.
3 people that you can contact. How do you stay grounded? What fills your bucket? So the other day I spoke to my mother on the phone and she said, oh, where are you going? I said, I'm going to acupuncture. First question out of her mouth. Oh, why? What's wrong?
Right.
And I said, actually, nothing's wrong. I feel great.
Right.
But I've made a commitment to myself once a month to go see my acupuncturist. She does acupuncture and Reiki. She's a freaking genius.
Yeah.
And when I've not done that, I've been a mess.
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
I've gotten
Absolutely.
off balance, and then it
Right.
takes too long to get back onto the seesaw and get
Absolutely.
balanced.
Absolutely.
So now I just see her the second Friday of every month at 11 o'clock. And that's just built into my schedule as
Mhm.
time that I need to replenish because the space that I hold as a trauma recovery coach is so intense so often.
Right.
It gives me permission, and I'm
Yeah.
putting that in quotes,
Absolutely. Right.
right? But I'm giving
Agreed.
myself permission to take care of myself, which is pathetic. I shouldn't have to give myself permission, but this is
Right.
how we've been trained.
Right.
So I want to cover something with you.
Okay.
So you went fast, 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 30 years, crash and burn,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
there's no balance here. We're from one extreme to the other. We're all on, and now we're literally the universe, Papa, God,
Right.
whatever you call it, is like, we're done with that.
Right.
And that shows up for you in a number of different autoimmune conditions.
It does.
Now, a lot of the people that I work with have been diagnosed with Hashimoto, Crohn's,
Mhm.
lupus,
Yeah.
rheumatoid arthritis. I've been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
All these different autoimmune conditions that often show up with a tremendous amount of chronic inflammation.
Right.
I see the correlation.
Mhm.
What do you see as the correlation between the running 1,000 miles a minute
Right.
and these autoimmune conditions that are popping up everywhere?
I think there's a bunch of things that are connected there. It's not just one thing or a couple of things. I think there's a bunch of stuff that are some of that's the food we eat, some of that's the conditions around, some of that's the activity level we do, and the air we breathe and the stuff. Right, the food doesn't have, even whole food doesn't have the nutrients in it. Vegetables don't have the stuff in it the same way they did 50 years ago because of what's happened to our everything, right? The climate and whatnot. So I think some of that stuff comes from is an outcropping. So I talk about, if we hold that, to your point about being able to deal with, right, to hold space and look after people that have deep trauma. I saw Tony, if you've seen I'm Not Your Guru on with Tony Robbins on Netflix. He does a thing with the one lady that's really deep, and they both cry and whatnot. But then he goes into the back behind the curtain and he sits down and he just sobs. And the guy says, "What's going on? Like, what are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I can't hold all of that inside of me. I have to release it somehow." And so he does, because he says, if I can't release it, I'm holding on to all that negative in his body, and it's going to come out in other ways. And when we, especially guys, like I say, unless I'm coughing up a lung, I'm not going to a doctor. So we want to be macho, where we want to be, I got to be strong. I got to be strong. And so we hold all that dis-ease emotionally in our body, and it's going to show up in another way. It's going to show up. It's going to hurt us somehow. My dad had prostate cancer a few years ago, and they caught it early, and he had surgery and whatnot. He's okay now. The point is, he's had some struggles at home, and there's been some pressure and some frustration. And so I said to him, he was sitting on his bed after his surgery, and we were waiting to be discharged, or him to be discharged. And I said to him, what are you doing with that frustration at home? What do you do with that emotion? And he goes, I just push it down. I just push it down. I hold it and just push it down. And I said, that's interesting. And he said, why? And I said, well, you're sitting down, right? And he says, yes, of course. You can see I'm sitting down. I'm like, great. So what's the lowest part of your torso you could push that down to? And he connected the dots immediately, but it took him a couple of minutes. And he's like, you bastard, are you telling me I gave myself cancer? And I said, I'm not telling you that, but if you can connect those dots, congratulations, because it is going to come out. So I think a lot of, whether it's autoimmune, I also have, and there may be something else around that. So I'm a little bit careful with that, but I have migraine level pain that's not migraine, that I wake up with, I go to sleep with. It's always, always there. And it's debilitating to the point where I spend a lot of my day north of 12 hours, 15 hours sleeping to get away from the pain, because it's the only thing I know that will take it away. And I take some injections into my head every 8 weeks. I do some very intrusive stuff to try and make that go away. But I think some of that is when people say to me, well, your body's letting you down. And I'm like, no, I let my body down. I didn't listen to it for 30 years. And like you said at the beginning, I'm a walking, talking billboard for what happens when you don't do any self-care. And so, are they trying to figure it out? Yes. Do I suck it up and figure it out? Yes. There's a bunch of things that are connected that I think it's, if we hold that negative emotional stuff, it's going to come out somewhere, and it's going to produce and not in a positive way. It's going to produce
No.
something inside of our body. Again, that dis-ease, that negative energy we're holding is going to come out, and it causes massive amounts of problems, and we can't figure out why. Well, if we don't understand how to handle the regular emotion we feel every day, for just regular people, stress and anxiety and depression, all the regular, but just because of some stuff with the kids or something at work or whatever, it's not heavy duty, it's not deep depression and suicide and whatever. But if we don't understand how to deal with those emotions on a day and release them, then we are going to end up on the other end of that spectrum. We are going to end up in deep depression and suicide. Why? Because it just builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up. And that was where we talk about our worth and our value. That came for me. I always knew I had, but I didn't really believe that. And I think that's where there's a linchpin hiccup right there. Because we can say, no, we pay it lip service, right? Napoleon Hill said, he said, what a person can conceive and believe they can achieve. So It's not just about, right? It's not just about the conceiving of it. It's not just about you have to believe that, because if you don't believe that that's there, if you don't believe you have infinite value, you will not show up for anything, for any of the bits and pieces in your life. And so something that happened when my body shut down, I was basically bedridden for 2 years from late 2015. And when you take an Energizer Bunny and squish them into a space where they don't move or can't operate normally, it gets dark in a hurry. So there was a suicide attempt in the middle of that. And I share that because I look back at it now and go, that was Papa gifting me experience and perspective I needed to be able to get my mission done. And so the bits and pieces, and I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if I can get that onto there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, we see it. Mm-hmm.
Semicolon, right? So for those that don't know what a semicolon represents, and I use a heart instead of the dot because I'm heart-centric, but a semicolon is the international sign for suicide survivors. So if you see one on somebody, that's what it means. They're connected to that somehow, whether it's their experience or they're honoring somebody else's. But the gentleman that put it on my wrist, he said to me, Gord, that's the biggest one I've ever done. And he's done thousands and thousands of them because they raise money for suicide prevention by doing semicolon tattoos. And he said, why did you want it on your right wrist? And I said, because when I shake hands with people, if they know what a semicolon is, they know instantly it's a safe zone, no judgment. They can talk and open up. And so that was a few years ago. I got that done. Just recently, I reached out to him again for some more body art. And he said, question does that tattoo work the way you had hoped it would? And I said, I can tell you this. I was in Starbucks, and it's now a couple months ago, but I went to debit my drinks, and the girl behind the counter held up the machine, and I tapped and whatnot, but my sleeve must have come up just enough that she could see my tattoo. And she didn't say anything, but her eyes filled up instantly with tears. Mm. And she pulled her ear forward, and she had a little itty bitty tattoo of a semicolon behind her ear. And I get goosebumps. It connected us instantly, really deep, without having to say anything, because it gave her a little bit of a glimpse of my journey and my adventure, and vice versa. And I think that was interesting that it's little itty bitty. When he said, Gord, that's the biggest one I've done, I find that interesting. People want to acknowledge it's happened, but they don't want people to know really. So it's little itty bitty. Right.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking. Not only was it so small for her, but it was really in a very obscure place.
Exactly.
Right. And so it's like, I want you to know, but I'm not really comfortable really sharing.
Right.
I'm
and
bringing
why?
it all out.
Right. And why? But that goes back to the whole, stop the stigma, it's judgment. We're worried about the judgment. We don't share. To your point right off the top about sharing, airing dirty laundry and stuff like that, that was all very private. We don't talk about that stuff. The problem was, because people didn't talk about those things, nobody understood that other people had demons, other people had challenges. You see people and you go, well, they look like they got their crap together.
Right.
I guess they don't struggle with the things I struggle with. And that wasn't real. We all have demons. We all have struggles. We all have things that we deal with. And so when we open up, I found the weirdest thing that happened. Once I started to share, because it took me more than a year to share. My wife didn't know, nobody knew. I didn't tell anybody when it happened.
Meaning sharing your suicide attempt.
Yeah, putting it
Yeah.
out there that, I thought, well, at the time I was looking after lots of money, millions of dollars for people. I figured, I can't share that. They're not giving their money to a suicidal guy. So I can't tell anybody. And even if I could, I wouldn't have known where to go. And so I just sort of held it inside. But once I was afraid of the judgment. I was afraid of the shame and embarrassment and whatnot that would have come with that. And when I wrote it in a couple of books, and then I spoke about it on stage at them on Mondays. And when I spoke it out loud was the biggest shift for me. When we write it down or we put it online, so it was online magazine and it was in a couple books, I'm still hiding behind the books or behind the screen because I wasn't right there when the people were reading the article or reading the chapter. Once I spoke it out loud in front of my friends and family and some church people and some colleagues from work and a bunch of strangers, I put that vibration out into the universe. It went and things shifted dramatically right there. And I think a combination of me sharing and then it scaring me. So one of the on a bunny trail of that, one of the things that somebody's mentioned just recently about my head pain, when we were trying to find the timeline of where that came from, I wasn't in an accident. I didn't fall down. There wasn't any. Where's the pain coming from? Because they can't find it. 3 different neurologists can't find it. I've had testing and testing and testing. They can't find why. So, but this person said to me, it's not, the reason they can't find it is because it's not biological.
I agree.
It's spiritual. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And they said, well, did you get a big mantle or a big mission about that same time? And I said, yes, actually, that's where my 10 million men came in just after I spoke my story at Mo Mondays. And they said, that's interesting. They said what they saw, and without sharing huge amounts of that conversation, he said to me, when you first sat down, he said, I don't know if you believe in this stuff or not, but he said, I didn't want to say anything until we kind of had a little bit of groundwork. And I'm like, okay. He said, I see this massive, massive, intense energy behind you. I see Papa in you. I see that energy, but he said, there's this huge, intense energy behind you, like massive, massive. And he said, I think what's happening is that Papa gave you that mission, that mantle to have that meaningful connection with 10 million men. And it started to work because in the week after I spoke, 3 buddies that were not in the room that night reached out and said, hey, can we talk? And they sat down and were blubbering all over the place about big things happening in their life. And I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, out of the blue for me. And I think it scared me. And so what he said is, what's happened, the pain where it is in my head is essentially third eye and straight through.
Okay.
It's not anywhere else. It doesn't radiate. It doesn't pound. It's piercing and it sits right there. And he said, that's beautiful. His big thing is beautiful. Everything's beautiful. And I'm like, no, it's not actually. It really hurts. But anyway, so he said, what's happened is Papa's trying to put that energy through you to get the job done that he wants you to get done. And you've constricted it in your head. So it's coming in and you've constricted it down. So a trickle comes out because you are making impact positively with people, but it's not coming through at the level he wants it to come through.
Interesting.
All right. So we did some work about opening holes, opening the space in the front and the back to get it to allow it to flow. A week later, when we were talking, when we first got on together, he's like, I got to tell you that huge intensity behind you of energy is gone. It's coming through you somehow. So, congratulations. That's wonderful. But the other thing that happened during that week, once I started to meditate with that and pray about that and think about that was Papa's energy trying to come through me. I had Papa give me a remembering. And I think he allows us to remember stuff, especially in very difficult or traumatic situations. Some parts of our brain never remember because there's no benefit to remembering. You're in a horrific crash or something. There's bits and pieces of that people never ever remember. Why? Because I think I don't think he allows us that to happen because it's not productive. If you remember the nasty thing, right? So I had this remembering. He allowed me to remember him talking to me. And I remember him being there. And I remember him showing me my family picture across the hall from the bathroom. Through my tears, I could see our family picture. And when I spoke my story at Mo Mondays the first time, when I was doing prep, I walked into our bedroom and I don't know why I hadn't realized that. I'd written it in all these different places. But if I was laying on the bathroom floor, it's on the right side as you go into our bedroom. On the left side is a his and his closet. And I say that because I have too many clothes and my wife doesn't have any clothes. So, but those closets are this far apart. There's never been a picture of anything on that wall because there's no room for a picture on that wall. So even in the moment, Papa was showing, it was miracle. Yes, he was showing me what I needed to see to get the response he needed.
Yeah.
So I remembered that, but this other piece came to me and that's like literally in the last 4 months that this piece has come. And the remembering I had during that week was Papa saying to me, Gord, I have a specific mission I would like you to do. I don't need you to do it specifically. I can get someone else to do it, but I want you to do this. So please don't do what you're doing. And 2 awarenesses came with that. One is that there's no longer any ambiguity about what my purpose is. I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's wonderful. But the other piece that is an even bigger thing, both for me and then when I'm sharing with people, to the point originally of what we're talking about, is that the creator that holds everything together in the palm of his hands showed 8 billion people plus on the planet. And he showed up for me in my bathroom when I needed him to be there. If that doesn't tell me what my worth and my value is, nothing ever will. And so, I look at people, I tell people all the time, and they're like, oh, I worry about what are people going to think if I tell them, you know what? It doesn't freaking matter what they think. Their opinion means literally nothing. Right. Our own opinion means nothing, because some days I wake up and I can jump a small building in a single bound. And then other days I get up and I'm not enough and I'm not worthy. So even my own opinion of me does this. Papa's opinion of me does that. It never, ever changes. He looks at me and goes, nope, you're perfect just the way you are. It doesn't matter. And we look at him and go, if the old man knew what I was thinking or what I've done, he wouldn't like me or love me that way. And he does. He knew us before he made the world. He knew us intimately. He knows what choices we're going to make. He knows what the end from the beginning is. So he knows more about us than we know about us. And he still loves us. And he likes us a lot and wants
no judgment
whatsoever. It's gone. So the judgment's coming from our finite human brain trying to understand an infinite, and there's no way to do that. And so we tend to put it in a box, right? Because it scares us if we don't understand it. So we put it in a box and then go, this is what that is, right? But we're limiting. Then we go back to this. Right? Because we're limiting, we're saying, well, he's way bigger than any of the problems we'll ever have. And he knows the end from the beginning. So he already knows how we're going to get out. He already knows the choices. He's not necessarily directing those choices. Free will, we can do what we want, but he knows what we're going to decide. And so, but the worth and the value of all that, if I understand my dad's a king of kings and we're his kids, that makes you a princess and me a prince. But we don't think of it like that. Our dad owns the cattle on 1,000 hills and the wealth in every mine. That's dad's cows. We can go play with the cows, milk the cows, have fun with the cows. That's access we have, abundance we have that we don't plug into. And I talk about Prince Harry. When he abdicated the throne, he brings Meghan, comes to the U.S. He just says, I don't want to have anything to do with royalty anymore. And that's great. And he can make his decisions however. He's a big boy. But is there anything that Harry can do to change the fact that he was born to Prince Charles and Lady Di? Nothing. No matter what he does in his life, he will always, his birthright is royalty. He can't change that. Whether he plugs into that and acknowledges it or not is a completely different deal. And so, yes, Papa's inside all of us. We're all his kids. But if we don't plug into that or acknowledge it, we have the tools. We always talk about, you hear people talk about, well, the answer's already inside of us. Yes, because Papa's inside of us.
So I want to hold it there, because for some people, like, for example, I was raised with no religion whatsoever.
Right.
I was raised in a household where my father's Jewish, my mother's Protestant. Yeah. Once in a while, we went to a Unitarian denomination, but I was not raised with it. I've never opened a Bible.
Okay.
It's just not a part of the culture that I was raised in.
Right.
But I believe in very much the same things that you're saying.
Right.
I just have a twist on it. So
Right.
instead of saying Papa or God, I always just think of it as the infinite universe.
Right.
And that
Exactly.
every single person who is here is necessary.
Right.
And every person that is here matters.
Yes.
And that there is a purpose
Right.
for every single person, and it lives within you.
Right.
And I always say when I'm doing my meditations that I'm creating for my clients with my hypnosis program is that the universe wanted you here 100%.
Right.
And it has good reason to work through you.
Right.
And what you need to do is A, B, C, X, Y, Z, depending on what it is that it is what they want in their lifetime. Right.
Absolutely.
But having that higher sense of self,
right.
whether it's Papa or God or Allah or the universe or whatever, at the end of the day, it's infinite energy.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
you were talking about Bob Proctor before. I just came back from a 3-day intensive weekend with Mary Morrissey.
Okay.
Very, very similar concepts.
Right.
And they talk a lot about energy,
Right.
quantum healing,
Right.
you know, understanding that everything you want, you talk about abundance,
Right.
is available to you. She
True.
talks about paradigm shifting.
Yeah.
To me, it's core belief changing.
Right.
Right? It's all the
Yeah.
same thing.
It is.
If you believe it, then you can
Right.
receive it. You can
Right.
ask it,
Right.
believe you're worthy of it.
Right.
You get that infinite worthiness knowing you're a child of God, right?
Right.
I get that knowing I'm here, that I
Right.
wake up every single day and the universe has a reason to be working through me. And so I'll continue that journey.
Right. Absolutely. Well,
Right?
there's a bunch. Yes, there's a bunch of stuff in there that you talk about. I was at a healing bowl thing that, again, growing up, that would have been woo-woo and that would have been frowned on. When I was like, no, I got to keep an open mind about different bits and pieces. And so I went with a friend that invited me to go. And this shaman had probably 50 of these bowls, different.
The sound healing bowls.
Yeah, all over this room. And there was one in the middle of the room that was big enough you stand in, which was the weirdest sensation when they bang on the side. And you could, my hair was vibrating. It was just the weirdest sensation. But he had said there are notes he could hit on a bowl that would vibrate in our cells at a quantum level.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can buy that for $1. Like that, I can connect those dots. Okay. And then, but he continued to talk and he said, I can hit notes that will vibrate in your cells for more than 4 decades. And I was like, wait. So, and again, so thinking about that and meditating with that and what about that? Is that right? Is it not right? Where's the truth in that for me? And what I realized was if notes can reverberate and vibrate at a cellular quantum level, so can negative energy. So can experience, can vibrate. And we wonder why we're doing all the right things, but it keeps getting sabotaged. How come? Something deep inside those paradigms, that thought process is thwarting without us even realizing it's doing it. It's counterbalancing the positive stuff. I'm doing all the right things, but I'm not getting the result that I should be getting. How come? And it's because that energy, to that point, to your point about that, is that it's not a lot of times what our mouth is saying, it's what our head is doing.
100%.
Right? So when I'm talking to athletes, I'm saying to them, it's not what your mouth is saying. Somebody misses a free throw and you run by them and go, hey, it's okay. And you smack them in the butt and go, we'll get it next time. But in your head, you're going, we needed those points. Crap. There's
and
negative.
by the way, ... I'm a loser. ...
Absolutely. Right.
I'm a.
Right.
Anytime we say I'm a.
Yes.
Shame.
You're about
shame,
to lie
shame,
to yourself. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that can be incredibly toxic.
Absolutely. Well, and you think about it on the other side, right? I have a friend that was like, Gord, I don't know if that's right. And I'm like, really? You're a big hockey guy. And he said, yeah. I said, who's the sixth man? And he goes, well, that's the crowd to get into it. And he got all animated. I'm like, exactly right. What happens when the crowd gets into it like that? He says, well, the players get more energized and more focused. And I'm like, great. So that's the positive energy coming from the crowd that's influencing what's happening in somebody else. It's giving them energy. It's giving them focus. We don't understand. So a janitor walking through a school, while the classes are happening and they're mopping the floor, They're not saying anything, but in their head, they're going, oh, I hate my job. They're putting that negative energy out that's affecting children in other, and no judgment to it. I'm just saying we don't understand we have that kind of power and influence without opening our mouth.
But on the flip side of that, imagine the janitor who's whistling
Absolutely
and
right.
singing and he's got his headset on and he's jamming
Absolutely.
out and he's kind of dancing in the hallway
Absolutely.
while he's cleaning.
Right. Right. We've all been in rooms where
Totally
we walk
different
in.
vibe in the hallway, right?
Absolutely it is. We've all walked into rooms where there's nobody in the room, but we can feel this warm, loving whatever. We're like, where's that coming from? Or vice versa, right? You walk in and go, hey, some crap's gone down in this room. Like, what is that? That's the residual energy floating in the space. And we don't think of it like that. Or we don't acknowledge it that way. And I think a lot of times we're scared to acknowledge it that way because it means, you know what? Now I've got to be responsible for what my thought process is. I have to watch and guard. I can't just sort of, if it didn't come out of my mouth, then it wasn't real. It doesn't matter. Right? It's happening in my head. It's affecting. And I believe that if my bubble, my energy bubble, right, is, and we can expand that out. You learn to expand your bubble, expand your energy, fill up the room, fill up the house, fill up the city, like just keep expanding. If you've been in a room, and you may have experienced that this past weekend, where the person comes in, I've been in a room when Tony comes into the room and my back is to the door. So I didn't see him walk in, but you can feel something in the room just changed. That's the energy of somebody that's so massively huge. How does that happen? Well, they work at that to get that to come out and to get that to push. But the point is, we all have that energy bubble. And so I forget where you are in the US, but if my bubble at the moment here in Waterloo, Canada, and your bubble wherever you are.
I'm right outside of New York City.
Okay. So everything in the path of you and I is getting the positive or negative effect of what our energy is, because my bubble and your bubble are connected. So as a crow flies, everything between us is getting slapped with our positive energy this morning.
Yeah.
So congratulations to all. You're welcome for getting some positive into your life this morning. But the point is, we don't think of it that way. We don't understand that quantum piece, that it's such a huge deal. Energy is such a massive for ourselves, but certainly for other people, in the way we influence and impact people without even realizing. You know, if you got kids or pets and they're misbehaving and they're doing their thing and they're all agitated, take a look inside your brain. What's going on inside you? Because it's not them.
Well, I'll tell you this. I was on the struggle bus this summer. I'm going to wrap it up here because I want to get some resources out of you for some of our audience. But to that point, I was on the struggle bus this summer with my household. I've got a kid that's going to be 18 next week.
Wow.
And I have a 13-year-old. And
me too.
Yeah, they both are on their own journey. They're both adopted. I don't think people understand that there's a journey that comes with that. I don't think that they even fully understand it, to be honest with you, which is a little bit of a challenge for me. That somebody that does understand it, I kind of stay on the fray to not influence their thoughts or beliefs because I want it to be their own journey. Right. But that being said, there was an energy in my home for a period of time this summer that was off. Right. And I felt like I was in the nucleus of it. And I knew too much. And I kept saying to my husband, ignorance is bliss. Like, I just wish I didn't even know some of the things that I know because I'm too deeply ingrained in this.
Right.
I was talking to another coach and I kept saying, I just wish this for them. And I just wish that for them. And she was like, you're taking a very wrong approach. Mm-hmm. What energy, if you are feeling this fearful and this worried and this scared, think about the energy that you are influencing in your household, even if you're never saying it.
Exactly.
So I thought, okay, good experiment. So I decided I was going to make a very conscious decision to only, because all of my fears were future-based.
Right.
So I was going to make a conscious decision to only focus on the present moment every single second, every single moment.
Yeah.
Focus and quickly I moved from fear to gratitude, fear to peace,
Yeah.
right? Fear to
Yeah.
contentment. And that's all I was doing. I was just switching.
Yeah.
Day one, I go out to dinner with my sister and my sister-in-law. And my husband, this is a Friday night in the summer. My husband sends me a video of my two boys. My oldest son came home from lifeguarding and said to my younger son, hey, you want to have a ping pong tournament in the basement?
Wow.
And they're going back and forth and they're laughing and they're having so much fun and there's giggling and there's everything I've been wanting in my home.
Right.
And I went, holy shit.
Yeah.
I just started this morning shifting my energy, not just my mindset,
Right.
but where I'm putting my focus
Right.
of my energy. And I
Right.
saw the shift like that.
Absolutely.
And that was very affirming for me. I needed that affirmation. So I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And now when I find myself slipping back into the fear and the worry of the what ifs, future,
yeah.
I catch myself quickly and I'm able to wind it back. But this takes effort. This takes mindfulness. This takes awareness, acceptance.
Absolutely.
And I'm in this space all the time, right? So I'm practicing. It doesn't just come.
No.
But I saw that shift so quick.
Yep.
And it was so
way
powerful.
More power than we think we do. We really do.
Oh my God. So she was basically saying, you're putting too much on them to do it. It needs to start with you.
Right.
And I was like, damn.
Exactly. Well, that's how you're supporting them, by putting that positive out, right?
I know.
It's such a huge deal. It really is. It makes such that energy thing makes such a huge
difference
on people, you know. I have a 13, a 16 and an 18 year old son. The 18 is about to be 19, but the similar type thing happens with them. If we're agitated for whatever reason, right? We project that, we put that out on people around us, and then we go, why are they like that? Well, no, we're being like that. One of the 100%. Sentences I gave 5 sentences to my one son, and the one of the sentences, he modifies his behavior with it, right? He'll be yipping with his brothers, and from somewhere in the house, I'll go, Zach, what number? And there's a pause, and then he goes, yeah, Dad, number 3. And then he goes, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm having a tough day. And my wife looks at me and she goes, that's wild to me that what he's doing is, so sentence number 3 is, I'm a magnet. What I put out is what I get back. But he understood, and then he modified his behavior based on the concept of that. He understands, if I'm in a bad place and I'm having a bad day or whatever, I'm projecting that out. They're not being yucky to me because they're being yucky. They're being yucky to me because I'm putting that energy out that way.
Yeah.
And we don't want to take responsibility. Extreme Ownership is a great book, but it's also a really, really good principle in terms of, it's not about anybody else. It's not your ex. It's not your boss. It's not your parents. It's none of those. We hold that power for ourselves. We hold that. That's not them anymore. It's ours. And we abdicate that. A lot of times we don't hold on. No, it is what it is. How are you? I'm okay under the circumstances. What are you doing under there? Like, really, truly, what are you doing under there? That's not how that works. So, it's controlling that energy. It's learning. Napoleon Hill talks about mastering control of your mind. Understanding your mind, and then mastering control of your own mind and your own emotion. Because once you can do that, you can control the energy that's going out. You can control how you're showing up in other people's lives.
Yeah,
you need to do that.
Yep. So you've mentioned Napoleon, you've mentioned Bob Proctor, you just mentioned this other book. I always love to end my episodes with low and no cost resources, because when I hit my own rock bottom that was full of shame 10 years ago, I did not have the financial resources to seek the kind of help I really wanted. I had a very specific coach I wanted to work with, someone that did hypnosis, which I felt I could benefit from at the time. Couldn't afford her at the time. And so I just started digging deep into low and no cost resources, podcasts, YouTube, and books. So before we were talking about autoimmune issues. And the book that was coming to mind is a wonderful book called Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die.
Okay.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I love that book, especially for people that are really challenged physically, where
Yeah.
things are manifesting physically and it cannot be found
Right.
as a medical condition. I often recommend it and I use it a lot.
Yeah.
What books or podcasts or YouTubes or anything has had an influence that you feel could be a good low or no cost resource to someone who's on the struggle bus, ready to start doing the work, but just doesn't have the financial resources to take that first step with working with a coach?
Yeah, no problem. And you know what? There's so many, to your point, there are so many resources out there that are free. So internet has a plethora. The one thing that I always caution people about, people say, oh, Google, you can find anything. And yeah, you can, but Google is a search engine. It's not a research engine, meaning any schmuck can put what they want on the internet. So sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not right. They'll just put everything out there. So you have to be a little bit careful, but there's a lot of resources you can get. Like you say, whether it's YouTube, webinars, there's lots of free content out there that if you put in Google, hey, I'm looking for autoimmune stuff. I'm looking for mental awareness stuff. And I talk about it as mental awareness as opposed to mental health or mental illness, because I think there's a lot of things under that umbrella. But that was a good book for me.
Oh my gosh.
Great book.
So wait a minute. For people who are listening to the podcast, we're both picking up the same book. Okay, where's Gabor Mate? Because that's a little bit of credit here. So I love this book, but it is a beast. So I'm always careful. But this is called The Myth of Normal.
Yes. It's a great
book. The subtitle is Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. I've referenced this book a lot. I'm still working through it.
Yeah, me too.
Gabor Mate, phenomenal. So for those of you looking.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're on the same page there.
We are. And a lot of the other things, I'm certified as a coach through Robbins Madonnas in a half a dozen different disciplines. I'm certified to teach Napoleon Hill, and I'm NLP. But you put those things together in terms of reach out to anything by Napoleon Hill is amazing. In terms of general well-being, there's lots of people out there. Wayne Dyer. There's so many people out there. I'm connected really close to Zig Ziglar because he mentored me, personally mentored. But he connected us to Jim Rohn and John Maxwell and Les Brown and Tony Robbins and all these iconic thought leader, Mount Rushmore type guys. And anything that you can put in that's a positive. Instead of, like, I read 5 to 7 books a month, and I have been for more than 30 years. Journaling is something that's free. Grab a pack of paper from the dollar store and just write. If you can't find a book, you can get a book at dollar store for $1.25. I journal in 5 different journals every day, and I have for more than 30 years. But being able to write down what you're feeling to get it out of yourself. I talk about, and with a group last night, real high level group class I'm doing, Boxed Inside Out. I said to them, stop venting into other people. If you're so they bring you on as a coach and they're talking to you as their coach, that's okay. But if they're venting into their spouse or their kids or their friends, or they're peeing in their brain, and that's not fair, because a lot of people don't know what to do with that. A lot of people carry that energy, that negative energy in them, and it's not even theirs, it's somebody else's, but they were trying to be helpful by listening. Sometimes if we can find somebody, and to your point about cost, sit down and write it out. Just sit down and I call it retching when I get angry and frustrated. And I can say it however I want, with whatever language I want. I can have whatever kind of opinion I want, but I just retch it out into one of my journals. And when I go back to look at it later, usually I can't read it. And I think there's 2 things happening there. One is that I was vibrating so hard, I can't even read my own script. But the other part of that, I think, is Papa augments it a little bit to make sure that I can't read it, because there's no benefit to doing that. So when I scroll through my book, through a journal and I go, yeah, wait, what happened here? Oh, yeah, I must have been really angry. I can't read it, so it doesn't affect me again, but I know, hey, you know what? That was a negative piece.
Brilliant.
So journaling is absolutely free. It doesn't cost anything. You sit down and my sisters used to write to Dear Diary when they were girls. And my dad said, why don't you write to Papa? Why don't you write to whoever? Like, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a specific person even. Just write it to yourself. Write it to the frustration. Personalize what that angst or frustration is and write a letter to them. Write a letter to that, because and then you're talking to that emotion that you're having inside yourself. And once you get it out, you can do lots of different things with it. If it's something that's not helpful, I do an exercise with clients where they write it out and then they burn it, because then they watch it go away, right? Again, those are all free. It doesn't cost anything, but there's some therapeutic property to that. Hugging people. And that sounds a little weird, but if you hug correctly, and any hug is better than no hug, don't get me wrong. But if I take my head to, let's see, that would be to your right. If you watch people hug, usually we go to the left.
Yeah.
Right. But if we can take our heads to the right and hug that way, we're now heart over heart, in which case that energy exchange is palpable. And if you understand and can feel your energy and you're in touch with your energy, you'll feel that. And if you're not, I have so many people that separate from me and go, why was that such an amazing hug? Why would that? The other piece I couple with that is hugging more than 20 seconds. So
I'm a hugger. Right? So you'll get that from me for sure. I hold
Absolutely.
on. I hold on for life.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because you feel people kind of relax, like they're going to let go. And I just don't let go. And you can hear them. I've had so many people audibly go, oh, a real hug, because they haven't had, right? It's just, and they separate and they go, wow, that was amazing. I got people that will get together with me specifically to get a hug. We'll have coffee, but they came to get a hug because they know how I hug. And so they don't get that in other places in their life. So, but that's a freebie. Things like a smile. It's virtually impossible to be negative with a smile on your face. If the physiology of smiling stops the negative in your head, you can't be negative and smile. And those things are leaving an imprint on people. There was a real quick story in Reader's Digest years and years and years ago about a young man that was in New York. He walked 10 blocks to work and home, but he was a loner, didn't have a lot of friends, no family. He said, you know what? I'm insignificant. There's nothing. I could disappear. No, it wouldn't even make a blip. Nobody will even notice. And then one morning he said to himself, you know what? I'm going to walk to work and walk home. And if nobody smiles at me, I'm going to end myself when I come home. And he walked to work. Nobody smiled at him. On the way home, one guy smiled at him. And as one smile in the grand scope but on that day to that guy, it saved his life. And the gentleman that smiled at him, a couple things about him, it didn't cost him anything. Why did he smile? I don't know. I still say that's Papa doing that, putting that in him to smile at that gentleman because he was trying to save that guy. But that gentleman that smiled could have gone home and gone, I'm not making an impact in the world.
Amen to that.
Because he didn't realize, I get goosebumps. He didn't realize, hey, you know what? He did something that day that saved another human and will make ripples for however long, eternity. But he didn't realize that. And we do that as an ongoing thing. We're all worried about legacy. Oh, you need legacy. Well, that's great. We're all leaving legacy. Everybody's leaving legacy. Whether it's positive or negative is entirely up to us. And a lot of times it doesn't cost anything. I'm going to do a thing next summer and in our town. I'm going to put a sandwich board on that says, free hugs, or put a sandwich board on the thing and blindfold myself.
Oh my God, I love you.
I'll get somebody to watch to make sure I don't get beat up.
I'll tell you this.
Right. But, if you need a hug, take a hug. And because people, and you watch people do that, and it's just so, they need to have that, especially with COVID, where we're 6 feet apart and don't touch and whatever. We get all neurotic about, no, touch, it's okay. We need that. Our kids need that. Our family needs that. I tell everybody I love them. And my guy friends go, when I started to do that, they're like, do we need to have a conversation? I'm like, no, you're a beautiful man and I love you. But no, I love my wife of 30 years way too much. No. It's not, I want you love. It's, you're a human. I'm a human. We're the same. We all the things that we worry about
And
as
you're
humans,
worthy.
we are worthy. All the things we worry about and that we make judgment about as humans, race and gender and all this stuff. When we were not here, before we showed up, we were asexual. We didn't have gender. We didn't have nationality or ethnicity. We didn't have sexual slant or we didn't have any of that. We end up on the planet, conceived on the planet. We're here. We show up. We get a body. Now we have race and
But
we have
we're
all these
still
things.
that glowing love and light.
Absolutely. And we do with our dash, right? We live in our skin suit or our human suit. And then as we leave, we drop our body at the door and we go back out into energy without race, without gender, we get so hooked up on all these other things that really don't mean anything. The presentation doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I put a I love you sign on our front lawn at the beginning of COVID. And this lady was walking her dog past our house and she goes, "How is that possible? You don't even know me." And I said, "I don't need to know you. People hate for no reason. I can love for a reason." And she said, "What's the reason?" I said, "You're human and you're alive. I don't need any other reason." And I instead of leading with judgment, I talk about leading with love, leading with why? Because the judgment doesn't matter. My opinion doesn't matter. Nobody else's opinion. My journey is not for somebody else. It's for me.
Amen.
Our journey is for us. Nobody else has to understand it. Nobody else needs a stamp of approval on what we're doing. The hair, it's been like that for a few years now, but my mother-in-law, and that's probably not a good thing to say in public, but anyway, when she saw it the first time, she put my face in her hands and she goes, "I hate your hair." And I'm like, "Well, then it's a good thing I didn't do it for you then, isn't it? I did it for me. I like it. If you don't like it, I don't care. It doesn't matter."
Yeah.
It's not important what other people think. We keep looking outside of ourselves for validation. We don't need validation from anybody but ourselves. And a lot of times it's not even that. It's validation from Papa. If we are
100%.
from source, right? That's where we get our validation. Then it doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter what their opinion is. None of that matters. And we hold our worth and our value there. Our life goes boom in a wildly positive way because we're pumping that out and we're having a massive impact. My show, when I started 17 or 18 weeks ago, and I have it at noon today on Inspired Choices Network, a long bearded guy, if you want to jump on that. But I was on 250 platforms globally, which I thought was pretty good. 17 weeks later, we're on more than 450, and I have a reach of more than 400 million with those platforms. And I'm like, where's that coming? Like, that's just, it's going boom. Why? Because the message is going out, that energy is going out that way, and people connect to that. We need that. And right now, I think we need that more than any other time. We really badly need that connection. We need that positive energy. We need that reinforcement that, you know what? Yes, what I'm feeling inside is right. It's right here. I have it right here. I don't need anything else.
I agree. And that's a great way to end it. This has been such a great episode. Always so happy to have you on. We'll have to do it again in 2023. I think you and I could go on and on and on. I'd love to bring more Napoleon Hill to people. Maybe we could even just come on and talk about Napoleon Hill and that philosophy.
Absolutely.
So
happy to do it.
Thank you so much. If people are catching this episode on the replay and they're watching the video, please drop your questions, drop your comments. We can both respond. We would love to hear from you and continue the dialogue. So thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. And Gordon, thank you so much for showing up today.
Thanks so much, Stacey. Make it another great day.
Make it another great day.